John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365 for the first time ever on Birds 365. What were we thinking not having them on the first 710 shows we did? Cayden Steele from NJ.com going to jump in and talk some birds with us for the next 25, 30 minutes. Cayden, how are you, buddy? How's your off season going?
Going well. Glad to be here with you guys. Always a big fan of the show. So to be here, on the 711 show, is an honor. So
711, yeah, we're gonna get you a Slurpee, Cayden. Sorry. I saw some stuff Cayden was doing over at NJ.com. Everybody should check it out. I said, well, we got to get Cayden on. So here it is. I guess we'll start with your latest, and that's rebuilding the secondary, because I was talking about that. And obviously, I think, people talk about Vic Fangio. We're going to talk about Vic because he did a nice piece on him as well. But, I mean, we've seen this scheme for 3 years, different people running it. But I think we got a firm grasp of the style of defense he wants to play. And you mentioned 3 different ways you can rebuild the secondary. I do think you got to be very wary. I think Eagles fans are excited about go get L'Jarius Sneed. Do you really want a press corner in this scheme? You just saw Jalen Ramsey complaining about how he was used in Miami along with Xavier Howard. What's your philosophy when you look at the 3 ways to build this secondary?
Yeah, I think the top way that they should build the secondary. And I think it's funny that they haven't drafted a cornerback in the second round since 2017. And look, they've gotten Darius Slay in a trade in 2020, and that worked. But before Darius Slay, since Lito Shepherd, they didn't have a number 1 corner for a long time. And you got Bradberry. We don't know what's going to happen with him. And Slay, it's getting up there in age. In my perspective, I think that, the top way that they could do it, they have 3 picks in the top, 63, top picks where it's a really good corner class and it's a really solid safety class. And I think that would be, the first way I would rebuild the secondary. I wouldn't go spend money on a L'Jarius Sneed, like you mentioned, John, or any of the other corners after him. Honestly, after L'Jarius Sneed, there's not much out there, in this corner market. It's not very strong. So I think, going through the draft would be my number 1 option, using that 22nd pick on whether that's Kool-Aid McKinstrey or Cooper DeJean or any of those corners, Quinion Mitchell, who falls. And then the second round, there's going to be opportunities, to get a really good, slot corner potentially. Mikey Sandstrell from Michigan. We don't know what's going to happen with Avonte Maddox. People talk about Isaiah Rodgers, but he doesn't really play slot. He's mainly played on the outside, and we don't know whether his suspension is going to get lifted or not. So nickel's in need. Safety is going to be in need, and there's going to be safeties there in that second round. So I think you give Vic Fangio an opportunity to pick his guys in the draft, and you hope that Vic, part of the reason that he was hired, you think, is because there will be some stability there. Like, have him here for 5, 6, 7 years. He's back home, closer to home. Let him get some young guys that he can develop and he can groom into, potential Pro Bowl and All-Pro players. I don't think going out there and spending money on, the high-priced name is the way that this team should attack this secondary. It needs to just get younger and younger. And L'Jarius Sneed's a great player. But like John, like you said, I don't know if he's a scheme fit. So I think the number 1 way is just going through the draft. And number 2 is just you draft multiple defensive backs. Why not try
carpet bomb it? Yeah, yes. Carpet bomb it.
The more chances you take, the more likely you're going to hit on 1 or 2 players. And I don't see – I wrote – and I think I've been so impressed by what the Chiefs have done with Trent McDuffie and Sneed, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams, and Brian Cook. Yeah. They've drafted so many defensive backs over the last 4 years. That's one of the reasons they have the best secondary in the league. Yeah, they signed Justin Reed and Mike Edwards back there, but they supplemented with a few veterans. But for the most part, they've gotten this young secondary underneath Steve Spagnuolo, and I think Vic can have similar success if you give him the right pieces.
All right, 2 questions then. If your philosophy is it's got to be youth, which is fine. And, oh, by the way, I don't think L'Jarius Sneed ever becomes available. I think the Chiefs going to franchise tag him, but we got to wait and see. We got another week before that becomes official. Job, Ricks, Ringo, 3 relatively young guys, 1 a year younger than the other 2, but all of them are considered young, no more than 2 years in the league. If one of them is going to step up and wow Fangio in camp and be great and force his way into more playing time, assuming health for everybody. Somebody gets hurt, yeah, you're going to be handed playing time. You're going to jump in and time like some of them did this year. Rank those three for me. Best chance to be a breakout corner for the Eagles in this upcoming year: Ringo, Job, and Ricks.
Yeah, I think first I would go with Ringo just because I think physically he has all the physical tools. He didn't drop to the 4th round last year because he couldn't run and because he didn't have those traits already. And I think we saw flashes last year where he looked pretty good at times as a rookie and he looked aggressive and, tackling and he was flying around the football. I think he's got the best chance to develop into a long-term starter in Philadelphia. And I wouldn't be surprised, maybe not next year, but maybe year 3, he takes that next step. I think number 2 for me would be Eli Ricks. I was impressed by him at times last year, but I also think there's a reason he went undrafted. He ran a slow 40 at the combine. He's not exactly the fastest corner in the world. I think he's got good ball skills and good instincts, but I think those physical limitations could make him more as a good, cornerback 4 or 5, like a nice backup that can come in and, play, when he needs to. And then number 3 is Josh Jobe, who, this is not to say anything against him because I think Josh Jobe is a really good special teams player. And I think he could play, a little bit. He came in that New England game, played a few games last year, but I think he also struggled, at times last year. So those are the, in 3, I think, Ringo's the guy I have the most confidence in.
Is it crazy, Cayden, to say essentially run it back at cornerback and from the perspective of James Bradberry for a couple reasons? One, I don't think anybody's going to argue he played poorly last year. I don't think anybody's going to defend that, but there are extenuating circumstances. He was moved around a lot. We all kind of raised our eyebrows when Sean Desai's talking about playing him in the slot in training camp. He said, what do you mean playing him? That makes no sense. Then he did it, out of necessity. They had to use about 8 different slot corners because of injuries and all the other issues. And then if you look at James Bradberry's history, he's been sort of an up and down player. He has a bad year, has an up year, has a bad year, has an up year, had a bad year, maybe he has an up year, was a second team All-Pro. He's a pure zone corner. We just talked about Vic Fangio. He's going to play him on the right side. He's not going to move him. Just play pure zone. He's a very instinctive player. He's a very smart player. He's a very savvy player. Avonte Maddox as well in the slot. Yes, you got to roll the dice. Injuries. You mentioned Isaiah Rodgers. I think we all know that the suspension is going to get lifted. He did play outside in Indianapolis, but his framework, that's because Kenny Moore was there. His framework is better set inside. Maybe he works out. Is it crazy to say, you know what? Too big of an issue to cut James Bradberry because of the contract. Let's run it back one more year, at least at cornerback. Is that crazy?
I don't think it's necessarily crazy because I think under Vic Fangio, we've seen him have success with a lot of different corners. I think it's possible that James could resurrect his career in some sense, but you mentioned the back and forth. And yeah, that's true. He's been like that in the last year with the Giants. He wasn't that good. And then he was an All-Pro then last year, but now he's over 30. So taking that risk and bringing him back, there's no guarantee he's going to have that bounce back year again.
No.
And I think that is the worry. But if you're worried about the contract, for people out there that believe that James Bradberry is definitely gone, I don't believe that's the case. I think there is a scenario where he does come back and play well, but I wouldn't do it personally. I would try to go the youth movement. I would eat the contract for what it is right now. I'd post you want it, pay for some of it next year and eat the rest later. Because from my perspective, this team currently, the way it's constructed, going into next year, they aren't going to be the top of the NFC as the Super Bowl contenders. It's more of a transition year, in my opinion. So why wait an entire year, to delay
That's
that?
fair. Start the youth movement early. I think I want to note the post June 1 designation. I think a lot of people misunderstand that. You can make it early, but you don't have that money until June 2nd.
Right.
So it's not like you get extra space to do a bunch of different things in free agency or even sign your draft picks. You have to wait for that money until June 2nd. So I think people kind of misunderstand that as well. So all of that factors into it. And I think you bring up an interesting point, Cayden. A lot of it is, where does Howard Roseman think this team is right now? Are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender, or is it time to turn it over and get that youth movement involved? Jody?
And I'll ask the same question differently by using a player as an example. People keep throwing on our stream, on my WIP phone lines, on my social media, we got to get Sneed. He's the Jerry Sneed. The Jerry Sneed, best cornerback.
He is the best corner. He is the best corner, but
right. But I just don't think he's going to become available. I think the Chiefs are going to franchise tag him. The argument against it is, well, and what the hell do you do with Chris Jones? You try and get Chris Jones signed without having to use the franchise tag. Now, it's a decision. You got to make the call. You got to go one way or the other, and they need to do this before the franchise date, which is 1 week from today. Last day you can slap a franchise tag on somebody. Another interesting team, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got Mike Evans, and they haven't been able to get a deal done with Evans, but they're still talking Evans. So all the guy does is go out and put up 1,000 yards every single year. I know he's a little long in the tooth, but damn, he's Hall of Fame level talent. Baker Mayfield. You want to pay Baker Mayfield, somebody's got to be your quarterback. You did well by going out, grabbing him, and giving him a shot. You can just lock him up for a deal and put it in place and then maybe continue negotiating with him. Or Antoine Winfield Jr., who I think is the best player. Of those three, Winfield's the best player. But the other two play very important positions. If safety isn't as important in the league for the Bucs, whatever else, if Antoine Winfield Jr. hits the open market, is that someone that the Eagles would go, all right, top of the market guy, we desperately need an upgrade at that position? Would he be a guy that the Eagles would aggressively pursue?
I think you would at least look into, like you said, I don't think that's happening. I think that franchise tag is getting slapped on Winfield. I think Evans is going to hit them open market, and whether he comes back we'll have to find out where he goes. And then Mayfield, I think they'll get a deal done. So the chances of it happening is slim. But if you have a player of that magnitude, like for me, the difference with Sneed is I have some questions whether Sneed is scheme dependent with Spagnuolo. I think Antoine Winfield is a really, really good player. I thought that when he came out in the draft.
Phenomenal player.
Yeah, second-round pick. He's been incredible throughout his career. I mean, it's going to cost a ton of money to get that done. And my only thought on that is, we've seen that, the top safety on the market. I'm not saying, Antoine Winfield isn't better than Jarius Byrd or TJ Ward, at the time, but we've seen the Eagles go for that guy that isn't necessarily the number one safety or the number one edge rusher on the market. The guys who are the second, third, and fourth. And you got guys like Cameron Curl and Xavier McKinney and Jordan Fuller on this year's market. So I have a hard time believing that if he did become available, I think the Eagles would be interested. I just don't know if that what he would ask, I don't know if how he would be willing to pay, because I think he's going to break the bank. I think he might be once Tampa Bay, if they franchise tag him and re-sign him, he's going to be the highest paid safety in the league. I just don't know how he would do that.
By the way, I think there's a better chance that McKinney gets franchise tagged by the Giants than Winfield does by the Bucs. I'm not saying McKinney's a better player. I'm saying the Giants don't have anybody else to tag. Tampa, you could make an argument for two other guys to potentially tag.
But I go back, guys, I go back to scheme. All that. McKinney's a better fit for what the Eagles want to run. Winfield's a better player, but Winfield is that guy. Winfield lines up in the box. He can play in the slot. He can play a third safety. He's almost like a rover. He can play. Do
you think he couldn't cover? I think Winfield could do anything you ask him to do.
I think he could do, but why do you want to waste a player playing cover quarters and cover two and cover? I mean, if you sign Antoine Winfield, use him like Antoine Winfield. The Eagles aren't going to do that. Same thing. We had this discussion with Kyle Hamilton, Cayden, coming out of the draft. I was like, that kid's amazing. And luckily I got that one right. He wouldn't be amazing here. They're just putting him in center field. Maybe he'd make a play occasionally. And you brought up a name I brought up at SI. If you're being realistic and you want the Eagles to get players to fit their scheme, Jordan Fuller, man, from the Rams, he's a good player. He's a free safety. He's a ball hawk. He spends all his time in center field, deep quarter, cover two. They play the same essential scheme. Perfect bit. Same thing we were talking about at corner. I don't want L'Jarius Sneed. That's why I'm saying maybe Vic Fangio can rescue James Bradberry. Jody brings up Rasul Douglas, and I don't think Rasul wants anything to do with Philadelphia anymore, but he's a great zone corner. Give me a zone corner. Give me somebody who excels in zone coverage. You talk to a lot of people about Vic Fangio. I think he can bang your head on against the wall. Is he going to change from the people you talk to? Is he going to evolve? Is it going to be different? If you bring somebody in like Sneed or Winfield, will he utilize them or will he stick them in his scheme?
I think he will utilize them. The vibe I got is that he's willing to, from the players I'm talking from, coaches, that he does, look at the strengths of certain players and he adapts in that way. But I do think he is very, I want to say he's definitely stubborn to the scheme he runs, but he likes things a certain way and he teaches details a certain way. He runs his defense, a certain way. And I thought, the one that stood out to me is I talked to former Eagles safety Quentin Demps, and he said when he arrived in Chicago, and this is, 8-7 years ago, so things could be different now. But we've seen, some ruffle between him and Dolphins players, and maybe he doesn't, want to change necessarily. But the thing he said is that when he went there, he was used to playing coverage, a certain way, and Vic wasn't really, necessarily, I'm just paraphrasing, not wanting to bend or on what, Demps was already used to or kind of adjust. And Demps at that time, he said, he didn't buy into it. And he wishes he could go back and do it because he realizes, how much success his Fangio has had and how much he could have helped his career in those latter stages if he just listened. But the overall takeaway I got from the guys, I talked to was that, Vic does the things, a certain way, for his defense and for the players on, that come in, I don't know if he's necessarily going to change his entire scheme. I think he will help them understand his scheme. I think he'll teach details to them. I think he'll do everything he can to get the most out of their strengths. But I think there is going to be a certain type of player that he likes and that he covets. And I don't think he's going to all of a sudden start running a bunch of press coverage and jamming, wide receivers at the line of scrimmage and start sending a ton of blitz. I just don't think, he's done that throughout his career. And he's had so much success, not doing it. So at this point, from the people I've talked to, I don't think he's going to switch. And that's why, like a guy like Winfield might not make sense, or Sneed, or any of the other guys you mentioned.
Cayden, when the Eagles powers that be are made available to the media today in Indianapolis, how is Howie Roseman going to respond when asked, why did you grant permission to Haason Reddick to go out and check the open market and see if there's a trade out there? How will Howie explain it without going, yeah, we're letting somebody else do our negotiating for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess for everyone who's going to be there today, they're going to have to find out. To be honest, don't expect Howie to give much of an answer to that question. He's going to beat around the bush and try every way not to say that, or not to give anything out there. But it looks similar to, the Darius Slay situation kind of last year where they're letting him search for that contract. I mean, from what it looked like, Slay, got close last year to going elsewhere. And then last second, they got something done. So
it was on his way to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Heading down I-95. Even tweeted about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a little bit of that situation. I just find it, different and more unique because Haason is still under 30. He's still one of the elite edge rushers in the league. And not to say Slay wasn't good at, throughout most of last season, but we saw a little bit of a decline at the end of last year. He hasn't fully fallen off. He's still a good player, but this is a different situation. And it comes back to my thought. If you think this is a transition year for Howie Roseman and you really don't believe that you are a Super Bowl contender and that you want to rebuild this roster for the next 2 or 3 years so that you can have a couple more runs with Jalen, you still believe in Jalen, you still believe in your overall franchise, and you kind of want to do that transition, then maybe you get rid of Haason Reddick for, if you get blown away with an offer. But if you believe that you're a contender, I find this, kind of odd that they're going to let him, at least look for another team or another deal.
No, I agree with you. We used the phrase, probably overused the phrase, all in. It's more of a poker phrase than anything else. Push all your chips into the middle of the table. You can't let Haason Reddick walk out the door and tell me you're all in. I'm sorry, you can't. If Howie Roseman tries to do that at any media session this year, I hope John McMullen calls him on the carpet for it. You're lying. If you let Haason Reddick walk out the door, you cannot then turn around and say, yeah, but we're all in for a championship this year. No, you're not.
Yeah, it's a difficult. So I'll end it there at Cayden_Steele19. Make sure you follow Cayden on X, Twitter, if you like to call it that. NJ.com does a great job with our buddy Chris Franklin and Bob Brookover covering the Eagles. You mentioned that a couple of times, Cayden. So I'm going to ask you to put on Howie Roseman's hat. And where do you think the Eagles are? Do you think they should be going all in? Or do you think, nope, you know what? We really got knocked down the peg. Nick Bosa's right. The league figured us out. We gotta take a step back to take two forward down the line.
Yeah. If I were to put on Howie's shoes, I would look at the roster and say, we're not too far away in a sense. I still have AJ Brown. I still have Devontae Smith. I still believe in, Jalen Hurts and most of the offensive line core that we're developing. And we know we're going to draft more offensive linemen, in this year's draft and next year's draft to keep developing. I feel good about my offense, but my defense is not close to winning a Super Bowl currently. We're getting, we're old in the secondary. We're getting old up front. We didn't get a ton of pass rush, production last year. We don't know what Jordan Davis will necessarily become. We don't know what Nakobe Dean will come. I think, if I were Howie, I'd view it as this defense needs a reset for the most part. And good thing, they have Vic Fangio to help, usher that. But I think they're a year away. I still think this team's a playoff team next year, a wild card or a division winner. But you look at teams like Detroit and San Francisco, they're built so strong. I know Detroit's defense, it's got some questions about San Fran's defense. Detroit's defense has some pieces, and the offense especially, they have so many weapons. I just don't see a world where you don't completely reset this defense where you're competing next year. I think if you go all in, I don't know if that necessarily fixes everything for the long haul. And I think if you look at the offense, you have young pieces, why not build up a young defense, on the other side, like Kansas City's done for the last 3 or 4 years. And it helps when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. So things are different. But
the cheat code, it helps.
Patrick Mahomes cheat code. All right. Last thing, Cayden, did a good job. We're going to have you back on the show again. Thank you very much for doing this today. And it's February, and it's cold out. I don't know. Are you a dog guy?
It's not that cold out today.
McMullen and I have already been out. It's a little chill. It's February. It might but not be Arctic February, but it's February. So we didn't expect you to do the show outside. At some point, you, like Chris Franklin, are going to have to find a good outdoor spot to be able to broadcast when we get you on in the spring and for summer. And
Chris goes outdoors, man.
He does. And he's got birds in the background. We think they're eagles. We think that they're mocking John and myself, kind of like our boy here, John Bell on Twitter, on our feed. So in future reference, when the weather warms, we need you to guarantee us you've got a good outside spot to broadcast from. Can you make that commitment?
Yeah, I can make that commitment.
You're in. You're done. You're done. You're going to be back with us again. Cayden, good job. Thank you very much. Thanks for hopping on. We'll talk to you again down the road.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
Cayden Steele, NJ.com, here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. Come back. There is one more issue I want to bring up with John McMullen. It's quasi-Eagle related. It's related to all 32 teams. The fact that they're not going to make a rule change during this offseason. And I think the NFL has, appropriately enough, fumbled the football. You'll find out what I'm talking about when we come back next here on Birds 365.